have two beautiful pieces of New York steak strip here. I'm going to give you two different recipes for it. One being a simple steak recipe that's braised in the oven for about an hour or so, along with the gravy and some rice and some greens. And the second recipe is going to be a beef stew. Now, this is going to be a tomato-free beef stew, so stay tuned to see how I accomplish these two dishes. I'm going to go ahead and add my green peppers and onions to the skillet. Now, you can pretty much season this steak with any seasoning of your choice, like a steak seasoning, an all-purpose seasoning. I made my own here, and what that pretty much includes is like fresh garlic and pepper, salt, onion powder, garlic, garlic powder, things like that. Now, what you really want to make sure that you do use is this Worcestershire sauce, beef stock, things like that, anything that will elevate your beef flavor. You can also use beef bouillon cubes. Be careful with those because of the salt content. Now, once you get these onions and peppers sauteed, go ahead and remove them from your skillet, and don't rinse out your skillet. Just add some oil and butter, and we're going to lay our steaks flat on this skillet. I'm going to use the exact same seasonings here on my steak. I marinated this for about 2 hours or so, and it's just that same little seasoning that I made that includes garlic, pepper, onion powder, all of the good stuff, along with that Worcestershire sauce, okay? I marinated the steak in that. Now, this is not just any old type of steak. This is some really expensive New York steak strip, and that was not my intended purpose. I sent my husband to the store to get me some roast beef, and he came back with this expensive New York steak strips. So I said, you know what? I'm going to make the best of this recipe or this steak and get as much as I can get out of it, because let's face it, groceries are too expensive, and I never would have imagined paying this much for steak. But since he already purchased it, I just went on ahead and just made the best of it. This part of the cooking process is going to be short. All you're looking to do is to get a nice brown coating or a good sear on the steak on both sides. And as you can see, it's not like a deep sear. It's not extremely seared on both sides, but there is some color, which is what we were looking for. And then you want to go ahead and add back those peppers and onions. And then you'll go ahead and also add some beef stock. You could use a low sodium beef stock if you want to go ahead and cut down on the sodium content. If you don't have a cast iron skillet, go ahead and transfer it to a baking dish, wrap it in foil, and then place it in the oven on 375 for about an hour. Now, I know for some people that's overkill, but for me, it's exactly how I want my steak. Nice and tender and falling apart. Now, some of you have been asking, where have I been? What have I been up to? Now, I haven't missed a beat here on YouTube, but also I just want to let you know that I have been working on my own spice collection and my unique hand-painted spice jars. Now, I'm going to release this collection sometime here in the fall, and I will definitely keep you guys posted and updated. But yeah, I've been making my own hand-painted spice jars and coffee mugs and plates and all types of little housewares or whatnot. So I'm excited to drop that collection coming up here soon. And also, as it pertains to YouTube, the last video that I made in this form, this long form, has been, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 months or so. But since that time, I have been making short videos. As you see here in this clip, this is one of my videos that's up right now under the shorts tab. Just go to my page and click on shorts, and you'll see that almost weekly I post a new short 30-second, sometimes 60-second video clip of some still delicious recipes. You know, this form of content seems to do better on my channel because I get more views, but I'm here to bring you back some old school content as well. Now, our steak is done. Let's take a look at it. And this is exactly how I want my steak. Now, I do need to let this rest, but before I do that, I'm just going to pour over some of the peppers and onions. You see how nice and caramelized all of the peppers and onions are? And the color for me is perfect, but once you let it rest, it's going to get even darker, and the juices will just reabsorb back into the steak. So you're just going to end up with this juicy, tender, fork pull apart steak. Look at that. And of course, I had to sop it up in some of that juice. Now, I did taste this piece off camera, and it was so good. Now, what I need to do is go ahead and I'm going to shred some of this for my children. My husband, he's eating a completely different meal, but my children and I, we're going to eat this steak as is over some rice. I'm going to use some of the juices as gravy along with some collard greens. I didn't make the rice or collard greens in this video, but you pretty much know how to make rice and collard greens by now. And if you don't, I'm sure I have a recipe on my channel for both of those side dishes. Now, we did have a lot of the steak left over, so what I did was I put it in the fridge inside of a Ziploc bag. And when you put steak in the fridge with all of the juices, as you'll see here, all of that juice would turn like white, but that's just the fat and oils and all the seasoning. But I put it on my countertop to come up to temperature while I went on ahead and sauteed some potatoes, carrots, onions, and mixed vegetables in some olive oil. And then I added some all-purpose seasoning along with some steak seasoning. And I also added some of that Worcestershire sauce because, again, we're going to continue to keep with that beef flavor in this beef stew recipe. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to add some of that Worcestershire sauce to the beef stew. And then I'm going to go ahead and give it a good mix and add some beef stock here in a second. And you just want to get these carrots and potatoes nice and tender before adding your beef, because remember, our beef is already cooked. And here I am adding that beef stock. Now, because our steak was in the fridge, I need to cut into it. So I'm going to go ahead and slice it through. Now, you can cut it any way you want. I'm going to first cut it into some chunks, and then I'll further break it down some of the pieces so that we have a mixture of chunks and little teeny, tiny shreds of beef flowing through our beef stew. Now, I get a lot of pushback on how I like my steak. And I know, I get it. I get it that a lot of people like their steak medium and medium well. But as you can see, although that steak was braised in the oven for over an hour, it was so nice and tender. Now I'm just adding that steak to the potatoes and carrots and beef stock, and I'm going to let that simmer on the stovetop until the color changes. What I mean by that is all of those fats and oils from the beef transfer into the pot, and you'll see coming up here in a second what I mean by that. And you can clearly see the difference here, how the color has changed and it just looks like a well-seasoned pot of stew. Now, this corn came out of nowhere, I know, but I just couldn't resist because I'm here making a soup for my husband, and this is just a coconut curry soup with corn, and I said, oh my gosh, let me save a few pieces and add it to my beef stew. So that's where that corn came from. So our beef stew is pretty much done. I'm going to go ahead and plate it up, or bowl it up in this case. And what I'm going to do here is add all the chunks of the vegetables and the meat, and then I'll pour over some of those juices afterwards. All right, so I've shown you how to get 2 recipes with 1 batch of steak, and I hope that you will try it and let me know in the comments if you do. Thanks for watching.